event through WebEx. And just to let everyone know that the session will be recorded.
Okay.
Good morning, everyone.
Good morning.
This is Saber from Fahar. So shall we start now to go live? Because we will be live now.
But not everyone is in the room, yes? I mean, we are still missing two people.
We are live. Sorry for the interruption. Samer, we are live.
I think everyone is there.
We are live, Samer, okay?
Good morning, everyone.
Good morning, Rashid.
Good morning, Mr. DG. Morning to our audience. We have a good number of participants. It's very much appreciated. We thank Fahar for providing us with this platform, the HR Club. I was one of the people that used to attend their sessions every time they conduct them physically. But we also, this is one reason we are here today, is because there are a lot of challenges that we have faced. Once again, Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh jami'an. Thank you for joining us today. It's a pleasure having you. My name is Rashid Falahi, and I'm the Government Affairs Manager at the Federal Authority here in the UAE, the independent nuclear regulator of the nuclear sector in the United Arab Emirates. As many of you may know, in the initial months of the coronavirus outbreak and the onset of social distancing, organizations had to hastily figure out ways to send employees home and then get remote users online as fast as possible to ensure that business is not interrupted. The question is here, why should business continue to be integrated with cybersecurity, and how we can bounce back during crisis, and most importantly, how we can attend to our people's health, both mentally and physically. We all recall the scramble phase in the initial months of the coronavirus, where we had to hastily figure out ways to manage our work. Once remote workers had access to corporate networks and cloud-based applications, the next move was to make them productive as much as possible, as this environment was foreign to many of them. This required scaling both security and IT operations. During this phase, the pandemic made us question our ability and whether we are ready for future disasters and can effectively respond to them. And most importantly, attend to the people's mental and physical health, as I mentioned, as people is our main concern. Today, we are here to explore and discuss the best practices concerning information security and business continuity management challenges during the pandemic. I am, and we are all delighted to be joined today by His Excellency Christopher Victorson, Panel Director General, His Excellency Mohammed Al-Kuwaiti, Head of Cybersecurity for the Government of the United Arab Emirates, Her Excellency Dr. Farida Al-Hosseini, Executive Director of Infection Diseases Sector in Abu Dhabi Public Health Center and official spokesperson for the health sector in the United Arab Emirates, as well as Dr. Tahar Al-Amri, official spokesperson of SEMA, and finally, Dr. Nail Al-Mu'mini, Head of Crisis Management Department in Dubai Police Academy. Just a little bit of housekeeping before we start, ladies and gentlemen. Please make sure that you address all your questions in the chat box, but we will also allow some time for Q&A at the end of each session. Now, without further ado, we will turn the time over to His Excellency Christopher Victorson to provide his introductory remarks. Sir, the floor is yours to start the event. Thank you.
Thank you, Rashid. And assalamu alaikum. Good morning to everyone. It's a great pleasure for me to welcome you to this workshop on information security and business continuity. As we all know, information security has become a very critical topic that requires government entities to have systems in place to safeguard information and ensure business continuity. This has been successfully tested in the UAE government and demonstrated at the time of the COVID-19, which started last year. Since the outbreak of the COVID-19 in December and after the WHO declared it as a pandemic in March 2020, it really triggered shockwaves around the world and locking down many countries and affecting our everyday life. At the time, the world experienced unprecedented challenges. It disrupted businesses, it disrupted trade, industries, and many sectors of the society. The United Arab Emirates, thanks to the wise leadership of the country, has successfully managed the pandemic. I would like to stress that, successfully managed this pandemic, always ensuring public safety, continuing business, and protecting the public. Following government directions, FANR, as being the nuclear regulator in the UAE, we took swift actions to ensure the protection of the staff and its well-being, as well as making sure that we could continue our essential regulatory oversight. One of the first actions we took was to form a team comprising various expertise from the organization that would advise the Director General on actions to have our business running while we worked from home or remotely. As our business, as many organizations, of course, depends on the human capital to carry out our inspections, which are essential for our oversight, and particularly to the nuclear facility in Baraka, in the Dhafra region, but also to hospitals around the country, to clinics and industrial sites using radioactive sources. We successfully conducted such activities remotely, ensuring that our business to conduct oversight was maintained and ensuring our staff safety at the same time. You may be interested to know that we have more than 3,500 licensees across the country using radiation in one sort or another. And we enhanced for them the smart services, so allowing them to apply for new licenses or renew existing licensing remotely. And this contributed strongly to the business continuity and the easiness of continuing the business. All these that I mentioned was possible to the very strong cooperation and support we have with the entire government, of which many of you are represented today. And I would like to express my warm thanks to all organizations who supported FANR in this critical time. I would also like to mention a few milestones of the UAE where we have contributed during the last time. One is the issuance of the operating license, allowing Nawa Energy Company to start not only Unit 1 of Baraka, but also Unit 2, which was a major effort of FANR last year. And this milestone, I would say, it shows that we were able to use our smart services and inspections to be able to support, even during this difficult circumstances, the timeline of the operator, the Nawa Energy Company, so they can continue and make the plant available. The UAE, as you know, is the first Arab country to have nuclear power plants. Unit 1 is already in commercial operation and producing electricity to the grid and thereby to the homes and industries of the country. And Unit 2 is currently in a test phase, but will soon go into operation. Next year, we are hoping that Unit 3 will come and add more power to the grid. Another major achievement for UAE and also for us was the hosting of the big nuclear emergency exercise, which we called Convex 3, which was held in October. We were asked by the International Atomic Energy Agency to host this exercise, which lasted for 36 hours around the clock. So we had shifts working, also nighttime, simulating a nuclear emergency at the Baraka nuclear power plant. During this exercise, all the UAE emergency response centers were fully activated to address the incident, which was led by the Abu Dhabi police and with the participation of many, many organizations. And by this, we demonstrated that the UAE has successfully has an emergency preparedness and response capabilities to address such unlikely situations effectively and efficiently. Let me also mention that during the pandemic, we were awarded a number of ISO certifications for our robust regulatory system. It covers many areas. It covers business continuity management system. It covers occupational health and safety management. It covers emergency management, knowledge management, and people's development. Such certifications proved that FANR's solid system to accommodate unforeseen circumstances and work diligently to regulate the nuclear industry in the UAE. The British Society also, the British Safety Council, recognized FANR with the International Safety Award for its commitment to keeping its worker and workplace healthy and safe. Let me finish by saying that these and many other efforts exerted at FANR reflect our staff's awareness and contribution towards information security and business sustainability, as we contribute to regulate the nuclear and radiological sectors in the UAE to ensure the safety of the public, the workers, and the environment. So by this opening remark, I would like to stress that I wish all of us a successful workshop, and I'm very interested to listen to the rest of the panelists and to the questions that we will get. This is an important workshop that we pay a lot of attention to. So thank you very much, and shukran.
Shukran, Mr. DG. Thank you, Mr. Christopher, for your introduction and highlights with regards to FANR efforts in responding to the pandemic. Being one of the employees at FANR, I personally thank you, and I'm sure I'm thanking you on behalf of all the organization. The organization didn't only attend to our foreign working environment technologically, but attended to our mental and also physical health. Thank you, Mr. DG. There is a lot to learn from each other, specifically in this pandemic. I'll now move to Dr. Nail Al-Mu'mini from Dubai Police Academy, who thankfully, and I thank him personally for joining us today, to share with us a glimpse of business continuity planning. The question, whether we are prepared for future disasters. Dr. Nail, shukran. Thank you for being here today. Sabah al-khair and good morning. We look forward to this very interesting topic. And of course, we personally look forward to learn from you. Every single person within this room is looking forward to understand how we can better be prepared for future disasters. So the floor is yours, and thank you once again.
Thank you, Dr. Rashid, for introducing me. How many minutes do I have so I can? 15 minutes? 20 minutes? Or you will let me know?
I will let you know. I'll let you know how many times.
This is better. First of all, I would like to thank FANR for their introducing this subject. Is very interesting to know that there's a shift of transferring knowledge in business continuity and emergency management in the MENA region. In fact, I started this career after getting my PhD degree in crisis management. When I started in talking about this issue as a crisis management, disaster management, let us be prepared, talking about Chernobyl, then what happened in Fukushima, and telling my students in different courses in business, MBA and executive MBA at King Abdulaziz University, that there's a need to introduce business continuity. And always, unfortunately, managers, CEOs, always they think you are pessimistic when you talk about disasters. So I published a paper in 2009, effective business continuity planning. Are we prepared for future disasters? I tried to introduce the continuity of operation in different meanings, not only in terms of disasters, to be pessimistic. No, this is business. This is opportunity, giving them lessons learned from different disasters, whether natural, man-made disasters. So, Mr. Rashid, can I share my presentation to just to guide me, or I can continue, whatever, which you prefer?
Yes, of course, we support visual demonstrations.
Okay,
Please go ahead.
I will simple presentations, not sophisticated like the one in Funner. Okay. Okay, this fine?
Yes, please go ahead. We can see it.
Okay, it's fine. So I moved through different organizations, public, government, working with international organizations, trying just to understand why we need to be prepared. Preparedness lead to, or awareness lead to better preparedness. So with Corona and COVID-19, and we document the Dubai police experience in successfully managing the epidemic. I know it is health emergencies, but Dubai police, they have a mere role in managing the disaster or the pandemic. Different, phases or different natural man-made terrorism. Unfortunately for us, we need to maintain the continuity of operations. Like, for example, what happened in Fukushima, what happened to a typical company, losing 450 million just in maybe 2 days, 3 days, just for not following the proper operations, or something happened. Even sometimes, unfortunately, when we talk about natural disasters, might be like we can't blame anyone. It is natural. But now with the improvement in the science or the disaster risk management approach for United Nations and for the World Bank, now we could analyze. We go back over the event and see what happened. Is it due to earthquake, or is it due to tsunami, or due to bad design, or bad implementation, or bad operation, or bad training of employees? That's why with COVID, the shift, like I know, it could be for me a milestone. I spent 20 years in this domain trying just to advocate for introducing scientific approach to disaster risk management. But with COVID, myself, I stopped talking about continuity of operations, because everyone understands what is the meaning of continuity of operation. Like, for example, in the Dubai Police Academy, we have classes, we have students, we need to continue operations. Otherwise, students will not graduate on time. This is our business. So this is our objectives. That's why with COVID, most organizations start to consider why we are not prepared, what we need to do. Why, for example, this airline managed the recovery better or quicker than other one. Why something happened, for example, in terms of nuclear. I know it's only 3 Mile Island in Fukushima and Chernobyl. There's no much evidence, historically, but it's so to analyze. But for example, going to airline industry, going to a tourism industry, some organizations, or businesses, return to normal activities, normal operations, and unfortunately, others, they just stay behind and they went out of business. That's why we need to understand what happened, why we still, in terms, there's an advance in technology, advance in management, whatever, but still there's an increase in human and monetary losses due to natural man-made disasters, or sometimes, unfortunately, we call natural man-made, and also there's another, which is a terrorism disaster. In our region, in MENA region, we witnessed different things. Like, for example, last maybe a month or 2 months, Shaheen hurricane. What happened in Gono hurricane? It's fine, 12 years, 2008, but still, like, 2008 we had Gono, 2021 we had Shaheen. 10 years. That's why, like, in 10 years, are we prepared? Like, unfortunately, what happened? Following disasters, there's something we call a memory. We'll forget. After, like, for example, it happened with me in 2004. I delivered a talk. I know there was a shake, small one, earthquake shake in Jordan 2004. So I, gave a talk about disaster risk management for earthquakes. After that, 5 from Dubai Police, Civil Defense, they asked me to repeat the same presentation, trying to spread the awareness. And I know none of them will come back and to deliver, because when they go back to their offices, they have their normal operations, they have their other issues, other problems. So they will think, okay, we had the shake this week or last week. We will not have another earthquake like this month or next month. Okay, postpone, forget it. Let us do something else. So that's why the lack of awareness of individuals or institutional awareness in terms of consequences. That's why I published a new framework for, I call it for earthquake consequences management. I try to let decision makers understand what potential consequences if something happened, something went wrong. I remember when I delivered different training courses in terms of business continuity during my work at Rabdan Academy, I used to give them a hospital as an example. Like, what happened if we lost electricity? What happened if we have just 10% of our electricity? What is our, like, in terms of medication, in terms of what kind of laboratory test we need to do this or this or this? Did we understand our needs or prioritize our needs? Or when something happened, we will prioritize. So that's why, unfortunately, time for us, when we lose time, we lose human, we lose an investment sometimes. Unfortunately, the lack of, as I mentioned, awareness, for me, I consider always this is awareness. Our better awareness lead to future preparedness. In terms of nuclear, for example, now, if the population surrounding the Baraka, for example, if they are aware of potential consequences, they will be prepared. They know what to do. There's no something by surprise. No, they understand what they have to do. That's why doing drills, exercises like from FANR and other organizations. But these organizations, this is their main business. Emergency, like, for example, police, hospital, nuclear. This is oil industry. This is their main business. This is under abnormal conditions, emergency conditions, something happened, people losing lives, right? That's why. But if you go to other organizations, are they prepared? No, I will tell you, no. Why? Because, as I told you, there's no previous, the corona, corona tested their preparedness. Are they prepared? Fortunately, in the UAE, yes, most organizations, they're prepared thanks to our technology, which enabled us to do some businesses, which we have to do. But if something happened, not corona, for example, floods, earthquakes, sometimes we consider, for example, there's no earthquakes, nothing will happen. Yes, it might happen. Last month, something happened, in I think in Ras Al Khaimah, we heard of this. So disasters, as I explained before, no, disasters, they can't, discriminate between, weak and poor, strong or weak, government or private. Sometimes, unfortunately, governments, they are more prepared than private. But what happened if the government depends on the private? What will happen to operations? For example, if FANR, they need some services from the private sector, if they are not ready, if they are not prepared, what will happen to us? Even if it's simple things, it might disrupt operation. we might lose money, we might lose like people or lives. So that's why, depending what potential consequences, how much we need to invest. So that's why I noticed there's an interest in introducing organizations. Now, what happened in crisis management center, or the in Abu Dhabi, the الهيئة الوطنية لإدارة الكوارث والأزمات والطوارئ. It's you can translate it, because sometimes, unfortunately, using different terminologies in disasters, the crisis, risk, some make some people. So that's why we need to consider the continuity of operations. Is it something related to technology? Is it related to human or natural? Unfortunately, sometimes we think this is only natural or man-made, might prevent us from doing our business. But when you go back to reality, it is not only natural and man-made disasters. We might lose power, for example, due to cyber attack, cyber security, cyber threat might devastate our, what happened in Aramco, well, during the disruption of operation. So that's why we might lose key people, like in our organization. What if we lose main operator for nuclear? That's why we don't need only to consider this must be a disaster in order to prevent us from our day-to-day business. No, something else might interrupt our operations, not only disasters, such as what happened, as I explained, like if we're losing electricity due to, for example, not natural disaster, cyber attack. So that's why we need always to consider different things. I go back, refer to my published paper, and as I explained, when I always consider disasters, they think I'm pessimistic. So that's why I try to be optimistic. Let us do business continuity. I published paper before the ISO for business continuity. Business continuity planning, are we prepared for future disasters? And always, it's very helpful for me. For example, Mr. Fanner mentioned the ISO. For example, ISO for us could be documentation, but are we truly understand what potential consequences of something happen? I remember one day I delivered ISO training, ISO 14001. Okay, and I know I am coming from emergency management. There was assembly point, assembly point with a green line, a green board, and I asked the participants. Okay, I asked them, what is this green point? Is it this assembly point? You do recycling there? There you collect your items for recycling? None of them told me this is an assembly point in case of evacuation. We need to assemble there some other operations related to emergency response plan. Why? Because as I told you, the consultant gave them, this is the template, this is the plan, this is the assembly point, and just he left the organization. And if something happened, they will not come and ask him why you assembled like the assembly point here, not on the other side. That's why we need always to consider different things related to effective business continuity planning. For me, I always start with the management review. Are they aware what potential consequences of something happens? Because if they are aware, they will invest. If not, they will not invest. That's why investment, when you ask for investment, for example, hiring consultant or doing training, do we understand what potential consequences if there is lack? For example, I remember. I used to study in DC, Washington, DC. One of business continuity director, Fannie Mae, he was my classmate. He was talking about business continuity. They had building entirely dedicated, like in Washington, DC, they have the main headquarters, and they have another building in Virginia, always just 15 kilometers away. For me, I used to live there. It's very expensive. When you just have dedicated multi-floor tower, just in case of something happen, floods or snow or whatever. And for me, I started the discussion. Where's the business case? Like you have an entirely building dedicated just in case something happened. When you start talking in numbers, how much that transaction, how much they will lose in one day, they will lose, for example, I remember the number, even I published book in 2007, I documented this experience. They lose, like in 3 days. In 3 days disruption, they will lose the entire investment for the entire building. So for them, One day will count, for example, 15 million. So for me, I will invest in having another building. So that's why I always consider we need to support academia. Dr. Finished my time? Mr. Rashid?
No, you have more time this time. Please
How
carry on.
much? How many? 5 minutes, 10 minutes? Tell me. Just whatever, whenever you
You
want.
have 7 minutes.
Just okay. So that's why I always, asking for, this is my mission. In fact, when I started in Hashemite University, resigned, moved to King Abdulaziz University, established the first disaster management program, master's degree, and crisis management center, and Press Migrant Chair for crisis management. Then I moved to Rabdan Academy to establish the crisis management and business continuity department, then to Jordan, then to Dubai Police. This is, for me, I have a mission, or vision, or whatever you call it, in strategies. For me, I need to let this science spread. So we follow scientific approach to disaster risk management. It is not a reactive approach. It must be a proactive. We have to be prepared. I recall one day they interviewed me in public TV, and there was a disaster. 30 students died during the flood. And they asked, what do you how you consider that a crisis management system? I told them, yes, if you talk about, I will speak in Arabic, Mr. Chris, maybe you're not, الفزعة. Rashid, what is the فزعة? How you explain? فزعة, نظام إدارة الفزعات, how you translate it?
Well, it's فزعة, if I translate it exactly. It's stepping in. فزعة, stepping in, and
So
this is how
I told that. Yeah, I told that if you're talking about نظام إدارة الفزعات, it is true. Yes, we did it. We managed successfully. But this is not an integrated disaster management system. No, we need to have proper mitigation, proper preparedness. Then we are ready for response and recovery. If we are strong during mitigation preparedness, definitely will be strong during response and recovery. That's why I think institutions, academia, they could play a role, and governments, like in any country, for example, they need to support establishing joint degree, for example, multidisciplinary degree, to understand what is the knowledge, how they spread the knowledge. For example, for now, they need to educate public government in terms of nuclear, whatever, science. This is science. Why not to use a program or chair or whatever, just to spread the knowledge from academia through conferences, training, education, whatever means, in order to spread the knowledge, or in order to produce the knowledge, could be, or just to promote the risk protection. Unfortunately, some people, they think this is government. This is not my role. At George Washington University, it is a private university. The first one who invested in establishing the first PhD program in crisis risk management. And then more than 200 universities, they followed the step of George Washington. Why? Because there's a demand, there's a need, and there's a government support. Like when FEMA, Federal Emergency Management Agency in US, they supported establishing crisis management program in each state. Their target 52 or 53 program, they end up with more than 200, 300. Why? Because there's a need. That's why I think we need to manage our challenges and see what opportunities in order to prevent or reduce human and monetary losses. Unfortunately, sometimes we can't prevent, we can't reduce. We have to live, or we call adaptation. We have to live with this. Like sometimes, unfortunately, like now with the climate change, with something what happened in some serious rise level, some countries, they okay, adapt, it's fine, but we can't do some multidisciplinary approach in order to solve some issues might be related to climate change or other issues. Unfortunately, sometimes it might related to media. Unfortunately, sometimes it happened during Corona. We saw some events when media propagates whatever in disasters, propagate response, mismanagement. Unfortunately, the media, they didn't play their role in this. I'm not talking now about COVID. I'm talking about 20 years of experience dealing with media and different level. So they have to play their role in order to spread the awareness. Unfortunately, whenever you talk about disaster, crisis, risk, they think this is pessimistic. Why are you talking like in TV, Dubai TV? Why are you talking about disaster? Something might happen. No, this is part of awareness, which will lead to a future preparedness. We need to support in all levels. That's why when we build volunteer programs, I remember in 2008, I had a meeting with the volunteer agency in Abu Dhabi. They asked me, how you think volunteer? I told them, volunteer program, if you want to be a successful one, you need to be a paid one. How this is volunteer? I told, yes, it is paid one. I volunteer with my time. Instead of getting paid, for example, $5,000, I will get $550, right? So I donate the rest. Like, volunteering, if it's not because some accountability and responsibility we have to always consider. Before I finish, it's good to mention that there's an interest in such domain, and Dubai Police Academy here in Dubai, in National Defense Colleges, Naif University, Prince Hussein Academy in Jordan, King Abdul Aziz, police colleges in different way, government, private, for sometimes bachelor, sometimes for higher degrees. I will not forget. Someone, he asked me a question. This, Mr. Rashid, this is the last. I will just give my experience. One asked me, he told me, do we need a science or crisis management? Why are you always talking about crisis management? That was in Arab Naif University for Security and Science. There was an event, they hosted me, and one of the audience, he asked me this question. He told me, we need hand of experience. We need some experienced emergency managers. But this is science. I told him, I know him, this man who asked me from Sabiq. He took a course in project risk management with me in Dubai, 2004. Okay, I told him, what is your domain? What is your specialty? He told me civil engineer. I told him, I'm civil engineer. Okay, I'm civil engineer. Then no need to invest in 5 years educating or getting some civil engineers to go back to field, to design, to build. Told them just 2 training courses, 1 week, steel and construction. Then they end up civil engineer. No need to civil engineer. I told him, you will have one who study English, for example, and one crisis management. Both of them, they will go to civil defense, for example. You think both of them, they will do the same? This one will consider the science he learned in emergency management and risk management and business continuity. But the other one, his background, all English, he will learn from experience. And unfortunately, sometimes will learn from bad experience. It is not the right experience. It happened with me many times during my training courses. I always encounter with different levels. Colonel, for example, I remember in Jeddah after Jeddah flood disaster, they asked me to do training. One colonel, he told me, no, you are not right. He told them, okay, let us do voting. All of them, they stand with me. And it happened another time. He told me, are you sure? I told him, I learned not from books. I learned from practitioners. My supervisor was Brigadier General. Okay, I learned from practitioners. So this is the knowledge we need to. You have experience. I have the knowledge. Either you correct my knowledge or I will correct your experience. But if we continue to do the same mistakes, we'll go to the same results. That's why having Gono in 2008, Shaheen in 2021, I never know, maybe more many in 2030. Okay, right, Hurricane, we'll do the same mistake, we'll get the same results. I will end up with just recommendation. If you allow me, Mr. Rashid, like we need to activate the role of universities and academia in spreading this knowledge. And also we need encouraging studies, specialized research for case studies to transfer experiences and to reduce future material losses. Thank you, Mr. Rashid, for giving me. I know you gave me more than I have in this, but thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Nail. On the contrary, we're very happy with the content that you've presented and provide us with. I've always been interested in the scientific approach when it comes to managing crisis. And I agree with you when you said that there should be much more and effective research when it comes within this regards and field. Do you hear me?
Yes, I'm trying to get out from the share, so you can do it from your side. So go back to the screen. Okay.
Or I think the administrators will be able to do that.
Okay.
However, there is a trend, Mr. Nail. You mentioned Juno was 10 years ago, and now we have Shaheen a decade later. I mean, we noticed an increase, of course, in human and monetary losses due to natural and man-made disasters. Why do you think that we have such trend? Is it because they lack planning, or we don't see? Because if it was proactive, it would have been mitigated. But even being reactive did not show us that there is much of a response has been done in this field.
See, unfortunately, you have population, always you have population growth, right? No, even like before you used to manage, for example, evacuate from a hurricane easily, but now you have, tourists, different, so overpopulation might be increasing different, like, for example, COVID, this is a new for us, right? The first time. I remember Dr. Joey Barbera, who was the CDC director in CDC director in Washington, D.C. He taught me the health emergencies. I remember at that time, there was a film for Morgan Freeman in 95, right? The course was in 99. The Morgan Freeman 95, I think the Outbreak, the film. So when we saw the movie, he started, discussing how, this is level 1, level 2 of, security. And for us, 25 years now, if we watch what happened in COVID, almost the same. So that's why, even if we are prepared, we get new things more prepared than us, for example, in terms of disasters, in terms of overpopulation. That's why, for me, I always consider it's fine to have losses. It's fine. It's fine, normal. We accept. But if we did our best to manage such losses, for example, if we do our efforts to prevent such things, it's fine. Then if we can't, we reduce. If not, we will compensate. But what happened if we didn't do anything? Just for example, in Fana, for example, something happened in Baraka, and then you expect everyone know what to do. No, losses will be more. That's why different elements make our losses always we will have losses. Like sometimes unfortunately we think this is something happened in Jordan, in UAE, but it will not happen in US. No, it will not happen in Japan. Japan during Kobe earthquake, they lost almost more than 5,000. Even Japan, the most sophisticated nation in terms of earthquake mitigation preparedness, even though they lost. Why? Due to fires, not due to what happened. What happened in the same thing in Fukushima. So even if we are prepared, we get new things. Giuliani, I remember Giuliani following the 9/11. Giuliani, when he mentioned, they interviewed him on CBC. Why you are successful in managing the disaster? You know what is his answer? Had more than 30 expected disasters, different plans. So when this happened, none of them was expected. So we did take this from this from this. We tried to manage as much as we can. And this man, he lost the election in New York, and he ran for president following. So that's why I think hopefully my answer is clear, Mr. Rashid.
Yes, it is very clear. It is very clear, and provoked a lot of scenarios in my head as I'm listening. One thing is, you mentioned that in 1995 there was this movie, The Outbreak, right, and by Morgan Freeman. And what's interesting about movies is that they provoke the what-if scenario for futurists, for us to predict what could happen. We lack such narrative here within the Arabic world. I mean, why do you think it is that we always go through this? For instance, during the COVID-19 pandemic, due to having enough data, New York, although the outbreak was huge there, but New York had data on how pandemics would spread, because they've studied how the swine flu has spread, they've studied how the bird flu has spread. So they had data on how such infectious diseases can outspread.
Yes. Mr. Rashid, where's the data come from? Like now, when you CBC or whatever, where? You remember? John Hopkins, right? John Hopkins University, right? It is a research center. So it is a research center. Why there's no similar one in the Arab region, for example? This is just dedicated for research. Mr. Rashid, I recall in 2000, Mr. Rashid, I resigned from my university 2007 because my president, he think crisis management, it is not science. There's no science related to crisis management or known as crisis management. It is government responsibilities. And unfortunately, some people think the same. Mr. Rashid, I will ask you this question. Which university you studied?
Griffith University in Australia.
Australia, okay. If you like, for example, if UAE University or Khalifa University or Sharjah University, I will ask you, do you think this university, Sharjah University or UAE University or Khalifa, they have just one course, even elective or whatever, related to emergency or risk or crisis? The answer is no. Why? Because they don't think there's a need to invest in this domain, unless FANAR and other government organizations, they ask them, okay, we need such in US, they did in FEMA, we need to have dedicated center. We have, at King Abdulaziz University, I gave a presentation, following go, no? I told them, okay, let us establish master's degree. They asked me why. Tell them, because disaster, it is multidisciplinary approach. It is not one-man show. A one-man show, it will be by luck. He might be successful, right? We need the civil defense to sit with the municipality, to sit with health sector, to sit during a class and discuss what happened if this happened. What is my rule? How I can help you? Like, for example, in FANAR, what do you need for municipality? Such multidisciplinary program or research centers, it will help to spread the knowledge. It will help to reduce the losses. It is acceptable to have losses. Japan, they are not prepared. No, they had, more than me in nuclear emergencies. What happened in Fukushima, right? What happened to TIPCO, right? So that's why, even if we are prepared, still we might have losses. But if we didn't do our part, then they can blame us. Why you don't have data, for example, such as in US? Because they had John Hopkins, they invested in this. You need, for you as a government, to convince one of government or private, let us invest, let us have research dedicated to disaster risk management, natural, man-made, or terrorism. Unfortunately, as I explained before, when you talk about disaster, when you talk about emergencies, this is pessimistic. No one would like to listen. I remember a minister, he told me, فالوا الشر بعيد. You can't translate, I can't translate. He lived in Australia. فالوا الشر بعيد. خلاص لا تحكي عن الأزمات. ليش أنت تفاول علينا? Why? So that's why we need to be proactive, not reactive, in order to minimize or reduce natural and human and monetary losses due to natural man-made disasters.
Very interesting
Hopefully
talk.
this is clear, or you need more. I can elaborate. It's fine if I have time.
Actually, it's very interesting. I am someone who's always in support of the scientific approach. During the pandemic, as per the directions of our Director General, we hosted one of the live witnesses of the Fukushima Daiichi event. And some of the challenges that I see you facing, Niall, is something that he has addressed, which is leadership when it comes to addressing the importance of management, specifically during crisis. Although they felt ashamed, people that worked during Daiichi power plants, Fukushima Daiichi, but they all acknowledge the leadership of the person that really took the decisions at that time. And I think what we need here is someone with leadership to spearhead and identify the importance of crisis management. Of course, you mentioned that there is population growth at the beginning. My opinion would say that a continuous public service announcements to a number of over a span of years to build that kind of transfer of tacit knowledge when it comes to how to respond to emergencies, specifically when it comes to populations. Dr. Nail, beautiful, amazingly presented presentation, and we look forward to hosting you in future events. But for now, please stay tuned with us. We'll be moving to our next.
But hopefully not online.
Hopefully, of course. We'll moving to our next guest, who's also a good friend of mine and a role model to his generation, Dr. Tahir Al-Amri, the official spokesperson for the SEMA. Also, you might find his face very familiar, as he was one of the spokespersons during the official briefings during the pandemic. And of course, his organization, SEMA, the organization that was a very busy beehive during the pandemic, and guide us through those hard times. Dr. Tahir will enlighten us on how to enable organizations to promptly and effectively respond to business disruption. دكتور طاهر صباحك الله بالخير. السلام عليكم ورحمة الله وبركاته. تفضل the floor is yours, as they say.
صباحك الله بالنور والسرور وعليكم السلام ورحمة الله وبركاته. Hopefully my voice is so clear from your end. I'm very delighted to be today with all of you guys and His Excellency, the DJ, and all the respectable panelists. I would love today to thanks all the cooperation between the government stakeholders, the public, the private sector, and the individuals of our local community. I'll be presenting a few slides just to highlight the main points that we are concluding as a recommendation and the status of BCM in national and local level. As everyone knows, business continuity is a must in our management system, as it's across all the four main stages of crisis management: the prevention stage, the preparedness stage, as well the response and the recovery stage. The national level and local level have worked so hard 10 years ago. So it's been a while since we started the culture of having a business continuity process and activities within our public sector entities. Without further ado, I'll start sharing my presentation slide just in order to give everyone an overview. Enabling the organization to effectively respond to business disruption. As everyone knows that we moved to a virtual world within the COVID time, and that was very rapid and agile, and that was one of the consequences of the management of the crisis itself. As everyone knows, during to some precautions, gathering wasn't a good idea at the start of the pandemic. But we thanks the strategic planning that we have it here in the United Arab Emirates. In 2015, if we go back to that year, there were a federal direction to move to smart government applications to set up all our critical functions and services to be up and running 24/7 within the virtual world. Without notifying that there is a huge number of threat and possibility of failure within the virtual world, as it's a risky environment. But all the thanks to the cooperation and the protocols that we have it from the federal level to maintain the security and safety of that environment. Proper planning was taken into account, joint training and exercise program between all the government entities, and that was with cooperation or under the umbrella of NSEMA. Response plan was there, and we had some yearly frequent exercise with all sectors. Resource management was planned to maintain utilizing of human capital as well as the infrastructure to maintain the rapid response in terms of disruption. And finally, command and control for federal level in coordination with local level. Without giving more explanation, I guess everyone believes that the sun never sets in a virtual world. So the threat and the possibility of failure and getting, let's say, huge risk as is there all the time. So we maintain four ways of securing and safety of our virtual world through active network, a collaboration between all the security and safety teams, having these protocols, and I believe His Excellency Dr. Mohammed Al-Kuwaiti lately will elaborate more on that. And at the end of the day, unifying management is our unified management is really something essential. Without further ado, I'll give a highlight objectives of our business continuity program, ensuring the continuity of basic services and product on the country. And we have seen these plans effort being pay off during the crisis time. Alhamdulillah, we didn't really face the challenge that many regions of the world have faced, especially the first, let's say, few months of the crisis. Building our organizational capacity and response of emergency and crisis and disaster. NCMA have led the national and the local level since 2007 towards building these protocols and activity within the crisis teams, establishing crisis management teams to the national and local level, as well as establishing crisis operation rooms dedicated to the crisis times, supporting organization while recovering from COVID, and I will elaborate more before I end this presentation. The preparedness of supply chain, having a redundant, let's say, source of support with cooperation of the private sector alongside of the government sector was really key and essential. Having an integrated supply chain for all the critical needs for the society as well as the government sector was there. Last is improving the efficiency and effectiveness of the vital operation in all state organization. And we meant by saying so, we never miss, I believe, lesson learned from our exercise, no matter how it looked like really a minor advantage, but we really re-engineer and redesign our processes to recover that point and to maintain updating the system as well. Taking into account all the crises that the government or let's say the country are facing, overall, we have a holistic approach of conducting a diary of that crisis, how it happened, what was the consequences, as well as the best practice. We review our actions as we went through COVID, and we seen that the importance of balancing between the let's say the economic factor or economic goals and the health and safety of our local community. Maintaining that balance between these two strategic sectors were a goal since the beginning of the pandemic. Giving an example that many countries went through a total lockdowns, and we have seen in the United Arab Emirates, we are always into innovation. We have our own sanitizing program, which was placed in and active in national level. And that program was customized to our needs and it was delivered in a specific way that it's not similar to any lockdown that happened in the world, where we maintain the movement, we maintain the freedom of travel. At the same time, we were putting the capability in order to secure our community and the safety of the public. When we talk about the standards we have here in the country for BCM, we look at four main stages. By saying so, our local business continuity standard, which was issued by NCMA, have been modified and updated to the third version, which was initiated and issued at the start of the pandemic, and it was that the third issue of that standard. Usually, when we are updating our BCM standards, we go through four main stages. First of all, we're studying and analyzing the current status, and by saying so, we actually go along with our strategic public sector and local sector government entities to examine exactly the gaps that we have it and the challenges that we have it in terms of utilizing the resources and to maintaining an effective response to all the sudden issues or risk that they could have. In the second phase, we are always complying with the government requirement to maintain the direction. At the same time, we are up to the best practice around the world. As we know, we never want to start from the start of the story. We always would love to catch up with the most updated practices around the world. Third point is actually a national survey with a strategic partner as well to maintain that collaboration environment while building our national documents and protocols. And lastly, we review and issue the new standards. I'll give just an overview, the main difference between the last standard of the BCM local level, which was issued in 2015, and the new standard main updates, which was issued in 2020. The older version was consist of the four main stages, as you know, of crisis management here in Emirates, the importance of top management support, and as you mentioned, we are always proactive. Crisis management support from the top management is really essential. If we look back to the data being issued worldwide, we could see in regard to COVID-19 in 2019, Health Security Index, which was published by the World Economic Forum, without mentioning the countries, one of the top country, the top 5 country in Health Security Index went from ranking to be in the first top 5 country to be at rank 186 in 2020, and all that not because of the resources or the planning, but was all the falling of not having a proper leadership. The older version was emphasized unified framework to implement the BCM, initiating an institutional team to build that culture within each organization and local and national level, as well as giving an insight about the best practice within this field. The new update was actually moved to more hands-on administrative system, simplifying the concept and the context and make it really easy even for the private sector to implement it. We attached with the standard itself a toolkit, guidelines, and specification to make sure that it's ready to maintain and to implement in all cases. We are, along with it, we include some guidelines about the key performance indicator to maintain that the top management and the leaders of each organization could really maintain how far they went into BCM. As well, authorize each institute and authority to shape their planned response according to their sector and the needs and the risk they could face. Last but not least, during the crisis, I'll give an overview how the national and the local level have responded to COVID in terms of prompt response to the disruption that COVID have brought up and challenges. Remote working, as everyone knows, that we have a national and local networks, secure networks, and remote working was there. But when we talk about remote working, it's not about really and distant learning. It's not about the systems, but it's about the culture and the adhere and the adoption of all our public sector to move straight away to a new environment of working. All the thanks to the culture of BCM and cooperation that we have it. Media management briefing were there. Transparency is really important in terms of crisis. As my colleague earlier, Dr. Nail, I guess, talk about the mismessaging of media during crisis usually, which we call it in crisis management infodemic, that we really face a really huge challenge, not locally, alhamdulillah, but overall around the world. Early warning system were there, and when we talk about BCM, it's really always a good idea to be alerted before things happen, where things could be utilized in no time and be ready. As I mentioned earlier, national disinfection program was implemented throughout the country, with more than 20 institute and government authority collaborative running that program. Economic support and incentives went to the private sector, and from the first days of the crisis, and we've seen the donation between the government and the private and individual in that regards. Having more than 100 protocols and guidelines to all social events, the medical sector, as well as the specific sector protocols, giving an example of the sports sector and the civil aviation sector. Smart solution to fight COVID-19, where one of the tools and handy tools that all government entities were able to have hands-on, and the training were there. But if we look at the systems, we always go back to the culture. The main thing when you talk about business management and business continuity management is actually the culture. That is it there? Is the process was based on the needs of the sector and the way that we utilize our resources. Enforcement of law to contain the spread of the COVID-19, all the thanks to comply with the protocols and the adherence from both sector, the public and the local sector. When you talk about business continuity, is always related to how fast and rapid we have the information, how we can process it, how accurate is the information. In terms of crisis, we are one of the first country in the region and the world to activate a dedicated center, not for our public sector only, but for the private and the individuals, to answer all the questions regarding COVID, which was the National Call Center, WIQAية. Last but not least, the National COVID Crisis Recovery and Governance Committee. As we mentioned, since 2015 and long back, we have a dedicated framework of different federal and local level dedicated teams to maintain business continuity through crisis time. By saying so, I actually went to the end of my brief, and I welcome message any questions from your side.
Do you hear me? I think
yes.
Mr. Tahar, a very informative presentation. I have a personal question, and I have a question dedicated to what you have presented. When the pandemic started, did UAE seek any assistance from foreign countries with experience to responding to certain outbreaks, disease outbreaks?
To be accurate with my response, United Arab Emirates learn from the global practice and global cases in terms of crisis management. And if we went back to what was the first outbreak that we have it in this century, I guess H1N1. We monitor that crisis, which happened in Far East Asia, in few countries, mainly Taiwan and China. We learned from that crisis, and we actually we didn't seek the support, all the thanks to the preparedness plans that we have it locally, the resilience of our national level, having a proper plan. And to be more accurate, in 2019, specifically in July, we conducted a national level exercise tailored to the infection diseases, and that was carried over through 1 month of preparedness and having coordination between the Ministry of Health and Prevention and all the government dedicated authorities.
Thank you, Mr. Tahar. All right, so since those were the ways that the UAE has reacted to the pandemic, I would like to know the main challenges, Mr. Tahar, that faced the authorities, not the people, the authorities, in terms of business disruption during the pandemic.
We believe that the bureaucratic system that we have it in all government and public sector could be really a main issue whenever moving to agile methodology of dealing with a crisis. But with the support from the strategic leadership that we have it here in this country, we were happy to overcome that challenge, and we were able to achieve a rapid response altogether with the cooperation of the entities.
Very informative presentation, Mr. Tahar, and we thank you for your time. I personally, and also on behalf of the organization here at FANR, of course, most of the attendees for the session, we thank NCEMA and the people that work at NCEMA for their efforts and dedication during the pandemic. Although you had a pandemic going on, you also supported us during the convex exercise, which was fantastic. It shows that you can juggle a lot of balls at the same time. And if it reflects something, it reflects the competency of the people that work as NCEMA, represented by yourself and our several colleagues at NCEMA. Please do deliver our sincere regards to His Excellency Al-Niyadi, Mr. Abid Hassan Shamsi. And we look forward for your contributions in our future events. Without taking any longer, we'll be moving to our next guest person now. When we find very familiar. Even if you see her in the mall, you would think that you know her in person because of the amount she spends on TV, briefing us about the pandemic and its updates. Dr. Farida, welcome to our humble session. Thank you for accepting our invitation. As many of you know, Ms. Farida Al-Hosani, or Dr. Farida Al-Hosani, serves as the Executive Director of Infectious Diseases Sector in Abu Dhabi Public Health Center and one of the official spokespersons for the health sector in the United Arab Emirates. She personally guided us through the pandemic with her daily briefings. Dr. Farida will address in her presentation, employees' health, physically and mentally during the pandemic, something that I'm personally looking forward to. Dr. Farida, the floor is yours, and thank you once again for joining us.
Thank you for this introduction. I'm really glad to be with you today in this session. I think it was a good introduction with Dr. Tahir, who covered the emergency response in general. So the health response really goes hand in hand with the NCEMA coordination and leadership. My focus today will be mainly on mental and physical health. I think this is very critical point during a crisis and pandemics. So I'll try to share my slides. I hope that you can see it by now.
Yes, we can.
Perfect. So we in public health always focus about the well-being of our community, our individuals. And by well-being, we mean not only absence of diseases or medical condition, but also mental well-being is very critical part. So there is no health without mental health. Starting with, I will just start with the definition of the mental health. It's the state of well-being in which individuals lose their own ability that can cope with normal stress of life, can work with productivity and fruitfully, and is able to make contribution to his or her community. So this is the definition by the World Health Organization. All of us go through stress, and this is normal thing of our life. We have stresses related to work, we have stresses related to our family, to the studies and others. When we start to reach the mental health is really, when we say we have a mental disease, is when those individuals are unable to function normally because of this stress. So dealing with the stress is a normal thing. Some of the key facts is that mental health is a very integral part of the health, more than the absence of mental disorders. It's important at every stage of life, from childhood, adolescent, and through adulthood as well. We pass through different stresses at each stage of our life. So we cannot really ignore mental health in children, because this is where it really sometimes starts, or there are some triggers in the childhood that can cause us to go through severe mental conditions. Many things determine our mental health, such as socioeconomic, biological, environmental, and some of the genetic or social factors that could affect us as well. Having someone who have mental health in our family could cause this. But also a very important thing to mention that unhealthy lifestyle could cause mental health. And the opposite is true. If we have a mental health problem, it might affect our overall health status and contribute to us being sick with different diseases. Therefore, as public health, we always consider mental health as a very crucial part of our overall well-being. So how can we build resilience and be more resistant to mental health problems and also more resistant to diseases? So as I said, this is really interconnected to each other. So mental health can result into medical conditions that affect our physical health, and if we have a physical health, this might affect our mental health as well. How can we focus and try to avoid getting into mental health problems? First, build your connections. You should not live isolated, because this will give you more chances to get sick, especially mentally. So having your own family, having friends, having colleagues at work, this is kind of the safety system that you have in your life that can help you identify some mental health issues, but also help you to recover from any mental health issues that you have. The second part is regarding seeking help. Some people might see that they need or might suspect that they need help, but a lot of people, and we notice this in our community, that they say it will resolve by itself. It's just a stress that I'm passing. I think as fast as you go to seek help, as fast as you can recover, because if you really delay the assistance, this can cause more severe and more complicated condition. And also it's important to highlight that the way you are thinking is really affecting your mental health. So you need to embrace healthy, positive thoughts and find a purpose of your life to help you cope with different conditions, and also foster wellness. As you know, during COVID-19, we had many challenges, and really it's not about getting sick with COVID that caused all this global stress that we had, but also the implications of COVID affecting our economies, affecting our tourism, affecting our ability to travel, and also affecting our mental health. I think that COVID is considered one of the biggest global events that affected the whole world. It's equivalent to some of the wars that the world passed through. Therefore, I think that the mental health impact of COVID-19 is critical. And we will continue to deal with some of the mental health issues related to COVID, even years after we recover from this pandemic. So it's really unprecedented global health emergency that we passed through. Some say it's equivalent to the World War II. Why it's important to talk about it? Because we could see that across different countries, across different communities, there was a lot of fear and worry of the unknown. We were not sure where we are heading, especially in the beginning. And we could see and feel a threat to our lives, to the lives of the beloved ones, to our work. And some people were fearing that they will lose their jobs during COVID. And some of them actually lost their jobs during COVID pandemic, especially in the first year. In addition, COVID caused a lot of changes in our daily life that we used to have before this pandemic. There are a lot of precautionary measures has been set, And dealing with change usually triggers mental disorders. So a lot of people might have difficulty to cope with the changes in their daily life, whether working from distance or even for our children, working remotely or studying remotely was not easy for them. A lot of them went through a lot of stresses to maintain their school performance and others. The other thing is new realities that we have to deal with, whether it's disrupting our daily routine or lack of physical contact, lack of visiting family members who we used to visit, elderly people who are at high risk, and sometimes being isolated because you had a condition. We could see and we could feel dealing with the families dealing with COVID cases, huge stress that they were going through dealing with such cases, especially with the isolation, where family members were kind of tiered away from each other's, isolated just to protect their life, but their mental health was really getting affected. It's also important not to ignore that COVID-19 affected the mental health of individuals and therefore had an impact on workplace. So we could see a lot of anxiety over, even when we went back in the transition, a lot of people, and especially again, let's say about children and teenagers, a lot of them was not able to cope going back to offices. Or going back to schools, so fear and anxiety from going and facing people where they were kind of a bit isolated for the last 2 years. Transitioning from the lockdown, the changes that we had, we could see and feel through social media, through talking to other people, we could see how much this stress affected everyone. We reached a level, I think it was by January this year, beginning of this year, we could feel the fatigue that affected the community, where they are not able to continue some of the measures. They started to talk about difficulties, and there have been a lot of challenges to maintain the restrictions because of the COVID-19 fatigue. And the last point is really the prolonged period of COVID. Some people predicted that COVID will end within 6 months or 1 year. Now we will complete around 2 years dealing with this pandemic, and still there is no clear end of where we will reach kind of a balance between the normal life, going back to a fully normal life. You could see, alhamdulillah, in UAE, we are currently facing a good practice in terms of number of cases, and this is very, very reassuring epidemiological situation. However, you could see in many countries in the world, and the global curve is really going up. So you could predict or suspect that at any point of time we can go back and the number of cases could increase. Let's talk about signs of stress and anxiety. There is no one sign or one symptom that can clearly tell you that this is stress or anxiety, but there are many things that you could feel or sense. Some of the symptoms could be physical, unspecific physical symptoms, such as feeling headache continuously, anxiety and muscle tension or pain, stomach problems. Our internal fears and anxiety sometimes turn into physical symptoms. So we are not sure why we feel tired, or some people describe it as chest pain. It might be different from person to person. Feeling sick or short of breath, those are common physical symptoms that might be because of the stress, mental stress that we are passing through. Therefore, it's very important that we seek medical help and try to understand the cause of such symptoms. Sometimes it could be really a medical condition, but because of the COVID-19 stress and all the life stresses, this could be part of the symptoms of the mental health. In addition, sometimes it's separate. We could feel difficulty to concentrate or struggle to make decisions, or we are feeling worrying or forgetful. Or sense of dread. Some people also can have and experience changes in behavior, such as feeling irritable, restless, sleeping too much or too little, eating too much or too little. Those could be signs of mental stress that might require support and might require further consultation. Also, smokers might tend to smoke more than they used to because this is kind of a body reaction to deal with the stress that they are passing through. So strategies to try to avoid or minimize the mental health and minimize any disease and condition, it's really interconnected, as we said. So there are many strategies that we always advise people about healthy lifestyle. And this is very important for every employee, and we work with different organizations to encourage such healthy lifestyle among employees, because it will improve their well-being, it will improve their productivity as well in work, and therefore it's very helpful. It's very difficult to maintain such healthy lifestyle, but I think the many factors, it's not only about individual, but it's also about organizations and how organizations are trying to support their employees to embrace healthy living and healthy lifestyle. So it's very important that people get enough time to relax and recharge, getting enough time to sleep. Sleeping is really very important for the body to recover and for our health. Too many or too less sleep could affect our health. Maintaining healthy weight, and this is again important part of our mental health. There is a lot of stigma related to overweight or obesity, in addition to the medical conditions. Regular physical activity, healthy diet, smoking cessation, focusing on positive thoughts, setting priorities and time management, sticking to a regular routine is really, and we could see that although we hate daily routines, but during COVID, when our daily routines changed, we could feel how much it's really important to have a daily routines. And also limit exposure to social media, because social media also adds more stress to our life. And staying busy with work, with different tasks, with hobbies, and building relationship. All of this is a culture that we would like to embrace in different organizations, and we work as Abu Dhabi Center of Public Health and as health organizations to ensure that such a healthy lifestyle is promoted inside the organizations to help their employees to have a healthy living and to minimize the impact of mental and physical health. It's also important to cover the getting the help, as we said, part of the challenges that we face in our community and most of other communities as well, as people usually tend to ignore or delay seeking help. And this really does not solve the problem. It actually complicates it more and get to a condition that might be very difficult or hard to be treated. So some people might have a good self-consciousness by being able to recognize what is normal and what is not. But some people might need help. The people around them, their family members, their colleagues, could highlight some of the changes that they pass through. So it's very important if the person noticed this stress in himself and that's affecting his performance or affecting his daily life, it's very important that they seek help. As we said, some of the family members that they trust can tell them about the changes that they have and therefore advise them to seek medical help. We, as in the health sector, try to identify, because we know that mental health problems increased during COVID, we started to think about services providing, especially the call centers. So we had the mental health support line, which is 800 HOPE, and also Istijaba line, where we dedicated licensed practitioners to offer psychological support to whether they are employees in the health sector, but also other community members who need mental health support. Also speaking to religious or spiritual leaders can help to improve the mental health status. Also, another option is to seek directly the medical health provider by taking an appointment to any of the mental health, private or public. Also in the private, we have many mental health clinics that are available, psychiatric or psychotherapists that are available. Why we think people might not be reaching the help when they need it? What stops them from doing that? A lot of that due to the lack of knowledge or awareness or understanding about mental health problems. So they might consider it normal and it will pass, but really it might reach a stage where it's very, very difficult to handle and they are not functioning anymore. And usually some people might take even months or years before they really seek the right medical help. Sometimes people know that they have problems, but they don't know how and where to seek help. And here, the awareness and the role of organizations, the role of the family support is very important to guide them through this challenge that they face and where to go. The third item is the personal and cultural perceptions and attitude, and also the stigma related to mental health. As you know, our culture is sometimes, especially in the previous years, they have been trying to stigmatize people with mental health, and therefore people might avoid to go to the clinics because they are afraid that X or Y person will see them going to a mental health clinic and they will start to stigmatize them. And this is something that we are working with different community members to try to address, because this is really one of the causes of the delay in seeking mental health support. If you know someone who you might think he have a health problem, how you can support, either offering emotional support and trying to listen to him, reassure him, try to understand him without making any assumption or judgment, and maintaining contact with him between time to time to ensure that he is really keeping up with things and trying to recover. If you see that he didn't, then you really should advise him to seek medical support, psychological support, to seek help, because some people might be reluctant, but they need guidance on this. A very important component to cover is related to workplace stress, because this is again a common problem that we have in different organizations. It's really the adverse reaction of people that have to deal with excessive pressure or other types of demand placed on them. So employees might feel stress when they cannot cope with the pressure or with other issues that they have. And we could see a lot of this during COVID-19, even in the health sector. The amount of stress that we had in the health sector, especially during the peak times, was huge. And I'm sure not only in the health sector, but also in other organizations, they have to deal with huge changes that are happening in the organization. So this posed a big stress on us all. And sometimes factors like the experience, the skills, or age, for example, sometimes people might face physical condition and they have also to cope with the physical condition or the medical condition they have, and in the same time deliver tasks related to their work that might cause them to even be more stressed. It's very important for organizations to try to match demands to the employees' skills and capabilities and knowledge, and have some kind of flexibility in understanding different employees' needs, and try to bring stress level down as much as the organizations can to ensure that the continuity of the productivity in the organization is going. Signs of the stress in the organization could be at individual level and could be at the team level, but sometimes it's really mixed. Individuals can cause team level stress. So again, maintaining for leaders who are running those organizations, very important to keep an eye on mental health issues within the organization, and especially when it comes to the team level, because it really impacts the whole organization and might really cause dysfunction of certain teams. So you could feel that by noticing a lot of arguments, higher level of staff turnover, more reports of stress, absence, for example, increased absence in the employees because they are trying to run away from this organization because they don't feel comfortable, decreased performance, and more complaints and grievance. All of those are signs of stress in the team level that need to be handled well and reach the core analysis of what is the root cause analysis of this stress that is really affecting the employee's performance. Sometimes it's people. Sometimes stress in individuals can lead to team stress. So it's also very important to identify if there is any negative team member or any individual within the team who have mental health. And you could feel that by noticing any change in the way they act or a change in their performance or increased emotional reactions. How can organizations support mental health? I think this was very clear during COVID-19, where we could see that many organizations try to support their employees, giving them flexibility of working remotely. And I think this is a very important thing to maintain, providing supporting service. And we could see many organizations really, like, for example, some of the ministries who started to provide employee support services, call centers, some providing some HR policies, flexibilities to help their employees, and also the organizations that work in a full well-being program of their employees have to include mental health, exercises, yoga, for example, at work, help really to ensure that there is less stress in the organization and more productivity. This is all I have. I hope that I covered the mental health. It's a big issue, but also very important issue that we would like to stress in every organization. And I would like just to say at the end that we always learn from our leadership. During COVID-19, if you remember, His Highness Sheikh Mohammed bin Zayed in the beginning, the positive way that he talked about the pandemic in the most difficult stage where there was a lot of unknowns, but he was dealing with it very positively. I think that this is unique for UAE, and this has helped us all as organizations and individuals to learn and inspired us to think positive and try to think strategic, learn and benefit from the challenges that we face during COVID-19 pandemic. Thank you, and I'm happy to answer any questions.
Thank you, Dr. Farida. It was a very much needed presentation to all of us and to me personally. It was a wonderful way to end this presentation by recalling what His Highness Sheikh Mohammed bin Zayed has done. Taking it from a scientific perspective, Dr. Farida, we lived in a time of uncertainty. We did not know what's coming next. We thought that some of us would lose their jobs. Uncertainty causes us to become nervous, anxious, makes our brains induce a lot of cortisol and adrenaline, which in the long run makes us not focused and make us worry a lot and make us sick. His words were the happy hormones to us, serotonin, dopamine, oxytocin. It was personally connected to us. He induced those love and caring hormones into our brains that made us mentally stronger. I personally, got fatigued as well from the pandemic. Do you believe the people right now are still living that fatigue, or do you believe, or do you see that since there is a little bit of, openness now, it's better? We can't hear you, Dr. Farida. Your mic is on.
Sorry. I hope that it is really getting better with number of cases going down. But I think, and based on many studies that is published measuring the mental health impact of COVID-19 pandemic, we know that some of the mental health issues that were triggered by the pandemic will continue with us for years. And therefore, we should not lose the focus and try to, as much as we can, to expand the mental health support, especially for children. I just yesterday was reading an article about the mental health impact of COVID in children because they were not able to go to school. They were not able to connect with their friends, and they could not even exercise. It's a huge thing that happened for the last 2 years that fortunately now our children are going back to school, but I'm sure that we need to be very conscious about those mental health conditions and the impact that our children and our employees and our community had. We will need to really not ignore those issues and try to identify them as early as possible and try to interfere. We need to seek medical help and also at the organization level. I think we didn't reach a complete phase of stability. You could see organizations facing all of their employees, forcing them to come to work. Some of the organizations had a midway. I think we will need some more time to reach kind of a stability in the workplace environment. Until we reach that, I think very important to focus and promote the well-being and mental health well-being to all our employees and family members.
Excellent inputs, Dr. Farida. I personally have a kid that learns. He tends to learn by play. His learning methods are different, and he's 4-year-old, and I was worried during the pandemic because there wasn't much that he can do, and I was scared that his skills, cognitive skills, wouldn't improve. Specifically, that he needs our attention, but we as families were busy with attending to our work, and it was a very difficult challenge. Do we have data, Dr. Farida? God forbid there is another outbreak somewhere in the future on how to attend to the mental health of those children.
Yes, actually, we are currently in a process of publishing a study about the impact of mental health in the school children. What are the most common mental health problems identified? And this is a survey that we managed to roll out with the Ministry of Education and Ministry of Health. We are now in the final stages of this study. I think this is very important. Very important first for this pandemic, because we want to deal with the mental health issues at school level and at family level. Very important that I said the impact will not go with 1 or 2 days. It will stay with us for years. So it's very important for us in the health sector to plan well for services that will be required for those school children. The other part of it is we need to learn for any future emergencies that we need to prepare for, how we can provide mental support. And we could see that we have done a lot in terms of providing the services, the mental health services in isolation locations and quarantine locations. We got many people from the community to volunteer and support families and individuals who go through COVID disease. We had women who were kind of supporting families during the difficult times where we couldn't care, they couldn't find someone to care about their children. So many initiatives that we could really see that the community came with to cover the needs, but also important to consider in our planning for any future emergencies and pandemics.
since I believe Dr. Nail will be Nail Momani will be very happy listening to Dr. Farida addressing that a research has been done, of course, within her domain, and we hope that crisis communication would have a similar attention. Since there is a research done with regards to children in cooperation with the Ministry of Education, I assume same thing would be done with Ministry of Amortization, and I believe there's a lot that is being done with regards to of course, the mental health of the employees in different sectors, not only federal government or local government, also the private sector. Something that came to mind, Dr. Farida, we see there are a lot of summits that address big problems within the world. There's the climate change summit. There are different conferences that take place. But until this moment, we haven't seen a summit that has been called upon by one of the biggest countries or the United Nations or the World Health Organization to take this seriously and learn from each other a protocol to be signed between countries, for instance, to aid each other and support each other in exchange of data. Would you call for something similar, Dr. Farida?
Well, I think this is a very nice suggestion that you have, and I'm sure that there has been a lot of discussions with the international community about the mental health. It's really different from one country to other. As I said, the pandemic is not over yet. So I think part of why this is not done is the stress that we are dealing with at the global level is not over, but also it's a very important topic to be addressed, and many studies and publications are currently available regarding the public health impact and social health and psychological impact of COVID pandemic that we need to learn, summarize, and we need also to come up with perspectives of future. How can we minimize such impact in the future?
I have a personal question for you, Dr. Farida. You were one of the busiest people during the pandemic. You had a lot to interpret and a lot to convey to the public, and we were just sitting there waiting for Dr. Farida to tell us the numbers today and what to do and what not to do. The question is, how did you personally live the pandemic? How did it affect you as Farida? And I hope it's not very personal, but we'd like to know the perspective of someone who's handling both the pandemic and also trying to live the pandemic.
Well, I think this is one of the most difficult questions you ask, Rashid, today. But to answer you, yes, it was one of my most stressful times that I had throughout my life. I was blessed to have a supporting family and a supporting working environment. But also, I think a big part of it is about self-consciousness, knowing what stresses you most and how you can relieve this stress. For me, I had my personal hobbies that work at that time as really kind of ventilation during the most stressful times. I used to paint and also gardening in the house. And I could see some countries notice that gardening increased in the houses during the pandemic. This is part of the therapies that can help really. So having a hobby, having friends and family is really the safety net that we have to protect us from mental health and mental stress.
So are those, your recommendations? What are your, from your perspective, what are the healthy practices during the pandemic? What would be healthy to do?
Well, I will advise the two things that are very, very important that we should never forget throughout our life, but also emphasize on during stress as the meditation and the sessions that can help us to de-stress mentally, and also the physical exercise, because those two things really improve our mental health and mental well-being. Exercise is crucial. You cannot imagine how much it embraces positivity in our daily life. So I will advise everyone not to lose those two things, especially during pandemics or during difficult times that they feel through life. Sometimes we forget, or we just go to the gym and for a couple of days and then we don't do it. I think simple exercises, things that you can maintain throughout your life, this is what makes the difference. Walking, swimming, football, even playing with the children makes a big difference. And having something that you want to do, that you are passionate about, having a hobby in your life. So the well-being is very important. Focus on yourself. You will notice that your productivity at work and at different roles of the life will be much, much better.
Dr. Farida, personally, from my perspective, something that I've done during lockdown. I did exercise, I did read, I did watch what I eat, and I did sleep very well. And I made sure that I have Zoom calls with my friends from time to time. And I developed a new hobby, which is knitting. I started knitting my own scarves and my own caps, and they were there at home. I don't know who it belongs to, either my wife or my mother, but it's really helped me, as I mentioned. And I realized it's one of the things that I do to distress. So I realized that I get busy with it and I focus on it because it requires a lot of focus to get it done, and it was interesting. Another thing that if you guys would allow me to suggest is always trying to come up with those new learnings. Increase neuroplasticity, neurogenesis in your minds, and makes you much more ready and agile and resilient to what's coming next. I think not just reading, but try to develop a new skill, and that's something that I personally did. I've written a couple of papers. I've improved some of the work that I do here at my organization, and it was quite a very interesting period for us all. One thing that I would like to say here, maybe people are asking about the link between cybersecurity and business continuity with mental and physical health. The human is the component and the core of all those functions. If he is not in a good physical and mental state, he won't be able to carry out his job. The human brain has two kind of cocktails: the angel's cocktail and the devil's cocktail. Angel's cocktail is serotonin, serotonin, dopamine, oxytocin, endorphins, you name them. The devil's cocktail is cortisol and adrenaline. We need to induce a lot of angel's cocktail in the brains of the people that work in our organizations. Fanner personally took good care of us, kept on sending us messages from time to time, hopeful and positive messages. They made those online gatherings, so they did attend to us. If the human factor isn't mentally or physically there, you shouldn't expect much of them. They become sloppy and they make a lot of mistakes, both digitally and physically. We reached to our session here, end of our session with Dr. Farida. We thank her for her time. We'll be moving next to His Excellency Mr. Mohammed Al-Kuwaiti. But I believe he will not. He had a sudden urgent meeting with His Highness, and he apologizes from joining us today. We truly do apologize for that. But I believe, in conclusion, Dr. Farida and Dr. Nail and Dr. Tahar, Mr. Christopher Victorson, in a nutshell, what has been provided here in this session was very valuable, not only to us as employees, but to several audiences. There are a lot of points that we took from this session. It's very valuable, and I found every single session contributing to me in several ways. At the end, I would like to thank His Excellency Mr. Christopher Victorson for his time, Your Excellency Dr. Farida, Your Excellency Dr. Tahar, and Dr. Nail for your time. We look forward to hosting you soon in another session. Hopefully, we do this annually, and I hope you enjoyed it as much as I did. Looking forward to see you soon. شكرا جزيلا والسلام عليكم ورحمة الله وبركاته.
يعطيكم العافية جميعا، حياكم الله.
شكرا دكتور.